All right, I will call to order at 6:03 the January 6, 2026 meeting of the Essex Elementary School Building Committee. And we'll do attendance by roll call vote. I have just a list from the minutes of all the people instead of trying to look at all the pictures. So if everyone could just be ready with their mute buttons off so that you can say yes when I say your name, that would make this easier for this and all votes tonight. Michelle Cresta.
Here.
Pam Bodwin.
Here.
Kim Provost.
Here.
John Benares. Teresa Whitman here. Andy Oldman.
Here.
Charlie Hay.
Here.
Gordon Brewster.
Here.
Tyler Verdon.
Here.
Annie Cameron.
Here.
Ariel Brain. Jen Huckerman.
Here.
Mike Gerhart.
Here.
Tim McDonald.
Here.
Henry Ettinger.
Here.
Emily Dwyer.
Here.
Did I miss anyone that's a voting member? All right, and we are in session. First item is minutes from the December 15th, 2025 meetings. Does anyone have clarifying questions before we take a motion? All right, then I'll take a motion to approve the minutes from December 15th, 2025 as provided.
So moved.
Seconded.
Emily Dwyer, and who did the second?
Henry.
Henry gives the second. We'll take, any discussion? Okay, then by roll call vote, once again, same process. Michelle Cresta.
Yes.
Pam Bodwin.
Yes.
Kim Provost.
Yes.
John's not here. Teresa Whitman, yes. Andy Oldman.
Yes.
Charlie Hay.
Yes.
Gordon Brewster.
Yes.
Tyler Verdon.
Yes.
Annie Cameron.
Abstain.
Ariel Brain. Oh, he's not here. Jen Huckerman.
Abstain.
Mike Gerhart.
Yes.
Tim McDonald.
Yes.
Ettinger.
Yes.
Emily Dwyer.
Yes.
Thank you. The minutes are approved. Next item is the preliminary design program approval vote. So everybody received the very, very large file with the PDP. Pam or Christina, do you want to say anything about that before we move to a vote?
No, I mean, I think that you guys know we've been working on that for the last several months. And as Teresa pointed out, there's a lot that goes within the preliminary design program submission to the MSBA. If you had any questions, I'd hope you'd just let us know in advance, but we're looking for our approval this evening to submit to MSBA at the end of this week.
Excellent.
And
Any clarifying questions?
The team for getting it all organized, because we did a couple of small pieces, but the bulk of the work fell to JCJ and Doran Whittier. So thank you for your help with that.
Excellent.
Teresa, can I say something? This is Gordon. I did read the front portion of it, not the appendix and the other 1,000 pages, but it was actually quite an incredible document. And I learned a lot about what we're doing here and how that school will operate and the space requirements and so on and so on. It's a terrific document. Well done.
Excellent. Thank you. All right, any clarifying questions before we move to a vote? Nope. Okay, then I will take a motion to approve the preliminary design program as provided.
So moved.
Seconded.
Gordon with a motion, and is that Henry with a second?
Yep.
Thank you. By roll, any discussion? Okay, by roll call vote, same process. This is required, folks, since we're online. I hope you all know that I'm not doing this just for fun. Okay. Michelle Cresta.
Yes.
Pam Bodwin.
Yes.
Kim Provost.
Yes.
John's not here. Andy Oldman.
Yes.
Charlie Hay.
Yes.
Gordon Brewster.
Yes.
Tyler Verdon.
Yep.
Annie Cameron.
Yep.
Ariel Brain. Ariel's not here. Jen Huckerman.
Yes.
Mike Gerhart.
Yes.
Tim McDonald,
Yes.
Henry Ettinger,
Yes.
Emily Dwyer,
Yes.
and I'm Teresa Whitman, yes. Wonderful. Thank you all, and echoing what Pam said, thank you to everyone who worked so hard to put that together. That's a big step down. So moving on, sorry. So many devices, so many noises. Moving on to the initial grade configuration discussion. Who am I turning this over to lead this? Who's taking this on?
Yeah, I think I'm going to turn it over to Jeff and Fawn and or Jim. I just wanted to remind everyone where we are as far as we knew that today was important with us submitting or approving the PDP. Now we're entering into that preferred schematic report phase. And I know we've had discussions in the past about, as you know, we have these 3 different grade configurations that we had to study within the first phase. Now that we're into PSR, that's where we want to really get the meat of the discussion and get your feedback as far as what you think about the 3 different grade configurations and whether you have any feedback for us. So that way we can start doing our due diligence, meaning JCJ, as far as further designing and further refining as we start taking off options that are just not necessary for us to study moving forward.
Sure. Good evening. This is Jeff with JCJ. So we wanted to just give a brief overview of the last conversation we had before the holidays and the changes and discussions then. So the draft that we presented, there was a lot of commentary and discussions around the top 2 lines, the education program being met both at Essex and at Manchester. We did make some revisions that are reflected here, and that's primarily the takeaway is that the K3 is very challenging to meet the ed program, and so the two options that are K5, the addition and the new construction have greens at both Essex Elementary and Manchester. The base upgrade K5 is split because of the size of the building. The existing building is undersized in the code upgrade, and then the B1.1 at Manchester. We changed that to be neutral essentially in that it's going to be it's still a K5 approach, but merging the 2 schools is going to take a lot of work on the district side. So that's it's neither advantageous or disadvantageous. It's really a neutral stance. The other 2 areas that were discussed, so under the building section, we added a additional work required at Manchester by the district, and that is represented for the K3 options that are moving the 4th and 5th grade to Manchester. So that would be outside the scope of the Essex Elementary project at that point. And so those 3 K3 options have red associated with those, and the remainder would remain neutral, the other options. And then under cost and schedule, we added a operational cost related to sustainability driven. And the conversation there is that you lose the opportunity at the 2 code upgrade options, to increase the energy performance of the building. Essentially, the existing exterior envelope has some minor repairs, but it's not upgraded for long-term energy efficiency. So those were represented with red. So that's this is like a visual summary of all the conversations that we've had and developed over the past months. And I'm just looking at it. I think you start to get a sense of which options are ticking more boxes in a positive way, and where other options start to lag behind.
Bond, do you want to add anything to that?
No, I think Jeff did a nice job summarizing we can answer questions as discussions develop with the SBC. So
All right, great. So at this point, why don't we take questions then from SBC members? Is that reasonable for this point in the discussion? I'm seeing a nod from Pam. I see a hand. Oh, someone's using the fancy hand raise function. It's Annie. I'm going to call on you first, Annie.
Hi. I'm just looking at the meets the educational needs across the table, and it seems like there's no weight put to it, they're not all equal, right? Not all factors are equal. If it doesn't meet the educational program, then it seems to me that it's a no-go. So is that how they're looking at it, or how we're supposed to be looking at it? Does that make sense?
It does. Vaughn and Jeff or Christine, does anyone?
Yeah, yeah, Annie, you're correct. That's kind of the foundational element to this. That's why you're doing that's why we did it, and you always do it in the order you do it to get the educational program written first before you look at the buildings. So that's the MSBA will look at that. I mean, if you look at their, I don't know, their charter, their mission statement, whatever it is, it's all about educationally appropriate facilities. And ultimately, when we go to the facilities assessment subcommittee, they will look at whether or not the building we're bringing meets the educational program that you've developed. So while these aren't weighted, that's a very important one and somewhat foundational.
I'm going to take a moment just to recognize for the recording here that John Benares and Ariel Brain have joined the meeting and been promoted as panelists, just so that that's in the record. I will make a comment building on Annie's comment as well that struck me last time, and I'm seeing it more clearly now, that the idea of straight code upgrade, base repair, that in itself does meet the educational need, is a point that we're going to have to contend with, I think, with the broader public as well. And I think as we move forward, it's not part of the process right this minute, perhaps, but part of the conversation may be that in that A1.1 and A1.2 section, that there be something in between those that is maybe not just a straight code upgrade, but what is the code upgrade or base repair get us to meeting the educational need? And I know that it may be greater than what some people are hoping for, but I know that there will be a contingent of people that are looking for that information, that what is the minimum we can do to get to meeting the educational need. We need to be ready to explain that if it is what falls directly in here, addition reno, or if there is a area there for future. I guess the other point that I would note jumps out at me is at the school committee level, John, back me up on this or correct me if I'm mischaracterizing, but what we had talked about is the idea that we had to study this because it was driven by input from members of town boards and from members of our communities during budget discussions in the last couple of years, but that there's not a great desire to move forward with merging the two schools, that Site B option, unless there is such a significant financial advantage that it overrides all of those red pieces right there. And when I look across the bottom, it looks like all of the other options have such a range that the range for Site B is not showing me such an offset financially as to not be as to have to move forward with that. And I think that the school committee is probably going to look at that similarly. John, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would say that's accurate, Teresa. I mean, ideally, unless it's a huge cost savings, I think people, would prefer to have their own school in their community. You're accurate.
Okay, thanks.
Teresa,
Anyone
may I
else?
There's
ask-
background noise. I'm at my daughter's track meet, but I'm listening.
You're good. Gordon, go ahead.
Thank you, guys.
I just like I said, I want you used a lot of words there, and I'm trying to in my head I'm trying to like thin down the number of words to get to the point of what you were trying to make. So are you saying that the cost, if it's enough, if it's low enough in Manchester, then that should be a considered option, despite the fact we got all the reds there? Is that what you're saying?
What I'm saying is that at the school committee level, the discussion was the group was seeing the reds before they're shown on here and just seeing the negative impacts educationally
Right.
for all of these reasons. So what the school committee is looking toward is, unless there is such a monumental cost that taxpayers will not be able to allow us to not consider that, then that doesn't seem like a viable option. And now that's being borne out with these very, very rough estimates.
Okay, okay. Because I mean, I'm looking at all those red of how the school would actually operate, and it appears, and I think is justified that it is all red, that it would be a challenge to make that site work, and I see the price is substantial, a little bit lower than the new school price, but nonetheless is substantial as well. Okay.
I would just offer that I think some of the original thinking was the students could be absorbed into the existing structure and you might need to make some modifications to common spaces.
Right.
And common sense was telling us no, but common sense didn't feel like a deep enough dive when you were talking about a $80 million project. So we never even got into, in those initial conversations, the other negative impacts that are popping up on this list. So I think it was exactly what Teresa said. If there was such a compelling financial savings to taxpayers, are we then forced to reconsider what the program should be?
So, and Pam, if I were to change, using my words here, if that project cost for B was $50 million, then that would be financially low enough to actually consider it, regardless of the negatives above.
I don't know what the number would be.
Yeah, I don't know what it either, but
Yeah.
let's say it's ridiculous. Say it's 40 million. So therefore it starts to sway people's opinion, but then maybe those negatives aren't so negative.
Correct. But I don't think any of these other considerations were ever publicly discussed.
Yeah.
We did a little bit when it came to when we were discussing the program, approving the educational program, is when some of this came up, and we were looking at the similar idea for the different sites. It wasn't in great detail, but
Okay.
Teresa, if I may, this will become an important point just to kind of carry forward, just because in some of the discussions that happen at Finance Committee, it's sort of, there's an observation that the head count has been dropping in the schools, and therefore there must be room to absorb some classrooms, in the K3, 4-5 scenario.
Yep.
Teresa, Emily, and Tim have their hands raised.
Let's go Emily and then Tim.
Thank you. So along the lines of what you guys were just talking about for B 1.1, I think it's not terribly dissimilar with A 0.1 and A 1.1, that they're not only are they not meeting the educational needs of the students at either school, but there are a lot of other red or pink boxes, and I've heard a lot of concerns from many sides about the K3 configuration. Sorry, and A 2.1. I wasn't looking all the way across. The K3 configuration, I think, has so many downsides and detriments to the mental health of our students, and equity wise, having those students make an additional transition. So I think that for me, looking at those and hearing the feedback, that those would be something that I would like to consider less.
Thank you. Tim?
Yeah, I'm just curious for others looking at this. what would be a very simple way of articulating the cost difference on A 0.2 to the rest of them? In other words, since we're discussing this whole question of cost, I would imagine somebody could say, well, what do you mean this A 0.2, while it doesn't meet the educational needs of Essex Elementary, it's $50 million. It's 30 to 40 million less. So how would one articulate why that doesn't make sense? Because it kind of treats it all as the same thing. And just looking at the number, I would want to know more.
That's a great question. Who'd like to take?
I have a comment on that as Charlie.
Yep.
Why would any taxpayer want to spend their portion of $50 million on a project that did not basically improve the sort of educational program that's being provided? It's renovating a building, but it's not actually increasing its size. It's not actually increasing its program capacity. It's not actually improving anything. It's just throwing good money after bad. It just doesn't make any sense from a responsible sort of fiscal point of view. And I think that's how it has to be articulated, because you just can't simply sit there and look at the dollar signs. You have to think about what the value is to the community. So it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to put, it's literally not this, but I mean, essentially put a coat of paint on a building and say, okay, we've done our job, because you really haven't, you know? And it's not a coat of paint, it's everything. It's new systems, it's new fenestration, it's code compliance, but it's the same layout, it's the same size. So it still falls short programmatically in every way. And you're still spending $50 million, you know? Why? It just doesn't make any sense from a fiscal responsibility point of view, I don't think.
To that point, just as a reminder, can one of the design team remind us, these very, very broad estimates used for comparative purposes only, we remember that conversation about the numbers that we have here, but they do not account for reimbursable versus non-reimbursable costs through MSBA. Is that correct?
Yes, this is just based off of project cost right now.
Okay.
So once we get to the next phase within the preferred schematic report phase, I mean, we can do our best guess as far as what your effective reimbursement rate will be, and we could provide a range of what your, reimbursement dollar value will be. But yes, we can talk about that definitely during the PSR phase, Teresa.
But I mean, if reimbursement ends up being 30%, just for argument's sake,
Yep,
that would even out the numbers.
that's
Then,
correct.
then A 0.1 or A 0.2 is going to become the equivalent of A 1.1, A 1.2, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
So my point in asking that, Charlie, was that is the case, that may help us have that conversation if those numbers are close, once we're able to refine that a little bit better.
Yeah, and I think that would be an important piece of a public presentation.
Yeah. Any other questions, comments? Is there one hand raised here? Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, just to Charlie's point and to Tim's question, I mean, I think it's helpful to try to develop analogies for things like this. Like, people would understand, like, going back to the public safety building in a renovation versus a new build scenario. Would you say, like, you would never renovate a fire station if you couldn't fit the fire trucks in, which is kind of what we're talking about here, is renovating a building, but it doesn't meet the core purpose of what you're trying to do, and therefore why would you spend the money on a renovation? And I think developing it kind of responses that people can relate to will be helpful in these conversations going forward.
I agree. And I think part of that conversation too, without finding the balance, is helping people understand, and Pam, you're really good at this, helping people understand what education looks like now and what education looks like in the future are not the same as what education looked like when many of us grew up. And this idea that doesn't meet the educational need at code upgrade, as determined by whom? Well, by this group. And so the conversation does need to include some education about why the educational need includes X, Y, and Z, so that people can understand what's coming in the future and the value of building a 50-year building, knowing what's coming down the line a little bit.
Right. One way we could potentially explain it is you would be investing up to $50 million to preserve a 1950s organizational structure for education and assuming that that's going to last you until 2080. You're not still using the same kit. Most of us are not still using the same kitchen in our home that we used in 1950. Yep. And we won't be using that same kitchen likely in another 30 to 50 years. So it's going to limit, it's going to improve the mechanicals and the heat and make it a safer, warmer building, but it's not going to do anything to advance how education is structured.
I like that. I don't see other hands up, so I want to know if I can take a little bit of liberty here and guide us toward another part of this, because we're still going to be looking at the different A0, A1, 2, even if we move past B 1.1. We're still going to need to look, or the more pressing issue, I think, is to discuss a little bit the pre-K through 3 versus pre-K through 5 configuration. And I'm interested to hear where people are with that. I will note that I have not received any additional back by email, like officially, emails that I can share with people with opinions on this. Pam, you received anything, or John?
I have not personally.
No, nothing.
Okay. Anyone have initial impressions on this?
Could the district perhaps walk us through the challenges or the benefits to the, because it ultimately is a district decision.
Pam, are you able to do that?
Sure. I think this is the configuration that concerns me the most, and don't think I could actually recommend it. I mean, obviously, if it's the decision of the majority, we would have to support it and move forward. But in thinking about analogies, I think the concern is that the educational program assumes and the regional agreement guarantees that students from each town are educated in a school within their community. So right out of the gate, by splitting up the population into 2 segments, we are not holding true to the ed program and to the regional agreement. It would be like, you have 5 children and you keep 3 at home and send 2 to live someplace else, and force those kids to make the transition to the new environment for a couple of years before they're going to go live in yet another place. So for us, I think if we look at the whole picture of education and not just the academics, creating a cohort within our entire elementary population that requires 80 students to leave the school, their community school, where they began their education, and then integrate into another school where kids began early, also at pre-KK, have an established culture, an established way of doing things that may be very different from their building, and put it on the students to make that transition, only to 2 years later make another transition to 6th grade. I don't think we're setting up that cohort for success, and I think we're putting children in a really precarious position.
It's hard to argue it.
I think if it's a model that when we originally presented, back when we began looking at the elementary schools and what was needed for the building project with the memorial and which one should go first, the proposal we had on the table was a pre-K 2 or 3 in one community and a 4 or 5 in another, all students making the same transitions and all students of those grade levels being together. There's, not all educators are in agreement on whether or not that model is the best, but what we could agree on is that it puts all students in the same transitional pattern and with the same experience throughout. This does not. This segments off a particular cohort to have additional challenges.
Thank you. Anyone else have questions on this or something that, I mean, if we're looking at the 0.1 columns, right? AO, A1, A2, 0.1, we are seeing in the community that there's impact on the community factors there that is not the case in the 0.2 columns. So I guess what I want to get at is there anyone here who feels like there's something valuable moving forward about this, or that the financial benefit of a 0.1 versus the 0.2 columns is worth pursuing this further? I know we're not voting tonight, but actually, frankly, I'm looking to hear, is anyone in favor of this? And if so, I'd like to understand why. What is
Teresa,
to recommend this?
Annie has her hand raised.
Annie, please go ahead.
Hi, and I'm not going to defend it. I'm looking at all of the one columns and just a Pam question, a Kim question. So the 0.1s all result in an ineffective educational program or not meeting the needs of the educational program in both schools. They're going to be costly because we're going to have to touch Memorial School in every, where is that line? Additional work at MERSD, right? So it's going to be more costly, a reduction in educational experience. And is like Pam said, I mean, I remember 2014 when we did the study about this, that would have been the time to discuss a different configuration, because we invested a lot of money in Memorial School in the way that that's working and trying to get it to fit in that site. I mean, I just feel like this is fruitless to me.
Hi, it's Kim. I completely agree. I think we spent a lot of time and energy in working on parity between the two elementary schools, and we've come so far in that to make sure that kids have similar experiences K through 5 to pursue this K through 3 and then 4 or 5 located elsewhere is a complete disadvantage to a group of students and taking away that parity that we've spent a lot of time working towards.
Can I ask one question about the line on the additional work at MES? Is there any value in throwing a number on those? Just because that's outside of, so it's not even, or is that included, Christina? Is that?
No.
Okay.
It's not included.
To make that work, that is a different, try selling that. I don't want to do it.
Well, I suppose to that point, looking at the delta between A1.1 and A1.2, you've got what, 10 to 15 or 10 to 20 million dollars there. Would it be that much or even close to it that would need to be done at Memorial to make it work? Do you see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Then that brings those numbers into alignment once again, depending on if you're on the high side of one or low of the other.
I don't know how to factor for this. We'll turn this over to the mathematicians, but I think there's also a time money factor in terms of getting a regional agreement vote to split the Essex population.
Yeah.
Right, because those would have to be two different completely set of votes outside of the project itself that you have with MSBA. So you would have to go to your regional agreement vote first in both towns to get them to agree to it before then going to the towns with the proposed project outside of whatever you're going to do at Memorial, if that's the case.
So again, I bring it back a little bit to the original reason that we even have these columns, which is there's not a huge operational savings. In fact, it may cost more, as Pam has pointed out in the past. So operationally, we're not saving money, which was a site itself wouldn't be, the project itself wouldn't be saving a huge amount of money such that you could overcome all of these negatives, and it would be only negatives. I'm not seeing positives. Someone's got a hand raised. Kim, go ahead. Field.
My gosh, I couldn't
Canfield?
find the unmute. Yeah, I couldn't
wanna
find the
unmute?
unmute button. I'm sorry. I was thinking about the line where it says that
Is
if
anyone
if
else
we were
hearing
to,
her?
can you
I
not
can
hear
hear
me?
Kim. I can hear.
Oh, okay. I was thinking about the line item that Annie brought up about how any of the point ones is a separate project that's funded by the district. And I think we need to make sure that people understand that if that doesn't mean that it's covered with the money for this project, because I do think there's been some question that I've heard about that, oh, well, it's if they just have to, do something at Memorial, that's fine. We don't have to worry about that money because of the building project that's currently going on in Essex. So, or would be going on in Essex. I just think we need to be specific for the public to realize that that's additional money that the towns need to come up with.
I think the other thing that has stuck with me, Kim, that's a really good point. The other piece that I keep hearing too that we're not articulating enough is this could be a very expensive temporary solution because moving the 4th and 5th grade Essex students into the Memorial School maxes out the classroom space currently existing and forces us to use project space and small learning space for classroom space. So if we see any spike in enrollment, and you will in 50 years, right now it feels like it will forever go down, but it will change. You don't have room to expand there. So then you're looking at who do you move? And then do you move the 4th and 5th graders back to Essex? Well, you haven't built for that. So there really isn't any growth room built in to any of the pre-K3 models.
I see Tim's hand up as well. Tim, go ahead.
Yeah, I guess I'm just curious, is there a reason why there isn't a projected cost associated with 4th and 5th grades having to go to Memorial? Because I think it's a pretty important point.
It's outside of the grade configurations. That's part of the project that we are asked to be studied with MSBA within the district itself. So Tim, anything considering 4th and 5th grade going to the Memorial site, it cannot be part of the project. And so therefore we don't know what that entails or what would be necessary to build on or add on to the Memorial School to accommodate that 4th and 5th grade.
Mm-hmm. Maybe I'm just spitballing here, but even if there were a column under cost and schedule that specifically said unknown costs associated, like associated with having 4th and 5th grade be at Memorial, even though we don't have a projection and it's not going to be funded, just an acknowledgement that there will have to be some cost associated with that going to that strategy. I don't know. Maybe it's just you just articulate it to the public when the question's asked, but
maybe it's a line that says additional debt exclusion required
something
for the
like that.
district
Yeah.
to renovate Memorial School. Cannot be
Yeah.
included in this project.
And
Because
also,
yeah.
sorry, Tim. And just real quick, I saw in the chat, Annie and Kim were talking about how anything that you touch at the Memorial School, MSBA is going to have a cost recovery percentage because you just built that school
Mhm.
within the last 5 years.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so they do that on any project that you do, if it's boilers, roofs, whatever it may be, they'll do a cost recovery percentage as far as if you touch that school.
Yeah, because fundamentally the difference between point 1 and point 2, aside from splitting up the students, fundamentally that difference isn't being captured anywhere from a cost perspective. And I think, look, I think what is going to be when folks get past the idea that, yeah, it makes no sense, even though it would cost almost half to just do a code upgrade, but it doesn't meet the educational needs of the zeros. They'll get past that quickly, but then when you start talking about a $90 million project for residents and what that means, they're going to have to, like, that's a whole nother conversation. But if those costs for the point ones to the and 2.2 are not clearly articulated, so that point A 1.1 is not 75 to 80, but 90 to 95, potentially, as Teresa said, somehow it should be articulated here.
And I think the point about the vote on regional agreement should also be added, probably, if we're adding line items.
Right.
Okay. I don't see any other hands up at the moment. Christina, could you run us through the process, Christina or Pam, on this again? And we're not voting tonight.
No, you're not voting tonight. It just came off strongly during the PDP phase that the SBC had a specific way of looking at the B1.1. And so the thought was, if that is something that the SBC wanted to take off the table at this point, it's not a vote, it's a straw poll, I would say, and that we would then ask you to come back at the next SBC meeting to do a formal vote. But that's what we're going to request for any options that come off of the options that we're studying.
Can I ask a follow-up on that?
Yep, I see your hand there. Go ahead, Annie.
So if we do a straw poll tonight or next time that says, let's take site B, B1.1 out of consideration, what more do you guys have to do on that one? Can you kind of close the door on it? I mean, because I just don't see how that's viable.
Yes, that would come off from the options that we're going to study during the PSR phase.
Yeah, and then at the end of PSR, when we do our report, we'll have to write up why they were removed. That'd be part of the report, that you went through this conversation. It didn't meet these criteria, and this is why you voted to remove it. So that would all be bundled up in the next phase.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm in support of that.
Well, an interesting thing, and Tim, I see your hand, I'll get to you next too, is I'm moved by Pam's repeated over multiple meetings comment too, that the pre-K to 3 split is the option that scares her or that concerns her the most about these. And so I'm wondering at what point that's an option to remove. And do we have to choose to to leave some of these, or at what point can we do that? I'm not hearing a lot of support for that either.
Yeah, I would agree. My only question around removing any of these options would be, what is the value of doing that earlier rather than later in the process? Because to some degree, showing the work and the attention that has been given to so many different options just speaks to the importance of the, whatever you want to call it, I would say the A2.2. In other words, it's been an exhaustive study. And if those are gone, I know it'll be in the report, but it's a question. When would be the ideal time to take them out? Is it now, or is it in the next step?
My opinion. Oh, sorry. Somebody else can talk.
Go ahead, Charlie.
Okay, sorry. My
Okay.
thought
No, Charlie, go
would
ahead.
be that it's beneficial to the project to take them off sooner rather than later. Because there's a couple of things going on. One is your project team has to keep working on them if we don't take them off. And that's just taking time away from working focused work on the ones that are more meaningful. It also means there's more time spent trying. I mean, there's meetings like this where you go through them over and over again. But the other problem is you end up having to spend more and more time trying to justify why they're still there, but why you don't want them. If you take them off and you have a reasonable reason to take them off, then you're sticking to your story. That becomes a talking point as long as it's well articulated and you move forward with an approach. It's like running a campaign, right? You need a campaign platform. And keeping them there means you're spending more time, not you, I mean the committee, the project team, everybody stumbling over why they're still there. So to me, it makes more sense to streamline the process earlier rather than later. It's really sort of beneficial, I think, to everybody. And I have to say that I really think spending a lot more time on the ones that need a regional agreement modification, simply, it just doesn't really make any sense because it's really hard to see how politically that would ever fly. The district doesn't support it, and it doesn't meet the ed plan. And part of the problem here is we talked about this at the beginning, the MSBA expects a project that supports the ed plan, which just got completed, a great effort by the district and by the project team. And we'd be endorsing a project that didn't meet the educational program if we did one of those. And that seems like in direct kind of contradiction to the mission of, well, the committee's mission.
Thank you, Charlie. Annie, go ahead.
Sorry, I wondered if Charlie and or the project team could kind of explain the nature of the work that would have to be done beyond the PDP, because the PDP is pretty extensive. And so what is the nature of the work that you would have to continue to do if you, to keep things on? Like, what is the obligation of the team and the project to kind of, what are we digging at now? Does that make sense?
Yes.
Jim?
Sure. Yeah. Well, what happens is, from here on out, we will take the options that stay on the table and we'll design them. So far, all we've done are sort of some large, I'll call them bubble diagrams, right? They're pretty high level. We've got the space template, we've got the ed program, but we haven't done any detailed design work. In the next phase, we need to do more detailed plans and site plans and really dig into the site conditions, the regulatory issues, and get a more detailed cost estimate for each of the options. So it's taking these options and advancing them further in the design process, which, I think to Charlie's point, the more that you all can focus on less that you're comparing, the better the process will be, because then you're focusing energy where it belongs. So there's quite a bit to do in each of these as you move forward, and spending that time and energy on options that ultimately really aren't going to go anywhere for any number of reasons can be very counterproductive and just distract you from focusing where you need to. So you'll be seeing floor plans, and there may be, for some of the options, there will ultimately be options within the options. So just because we drew a diagram right now that looks a certain way doesn't mean that's going to be where that ends up by the end of preferred schematic, because we now need to really dig into it. We'll be showing you various layouts, room arrangements. There's going to be different, each of these options could morph into a couple of sub options, and that can get out of control pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Does that help?
And I'm also wondering, you've got this meeting on the 28th, right? And, do you want to go in there with all of these on the table, or do you want to kind of say something like B is out,
right,
and it's not looking good for the 0.1s on any of these columns?
Right.
So that at least the public feels like they're getting some opportunity to maybe weigh in before we kill it, or is that waiting too long?
We have a pretty tight schedule, I will say that, for both our PSR phase as well as our schematic design phase. I'm going to talk about that, touch on that later after we finish this conversation, as far as overall schedule and what that looks like. I think that if we can show the work, which I think we talked about at length during even just the PDP phase, without even looking at cost comparative between the options and just looking at the criteria itself, it was apparent with the discussion as far as how you felt about specifically the educational program obviously being a priority for the options that you're studying within the PSR phase. And so for us, to Jim's point, there's still a lot of work that needs to happen. And if we can get to a place where people agree that we should be focusing on specific options, I think that that would be best for this phase.
And that's the responsibility of this group, right? Is to help narrow it down, certainly take some public input, but to be the expert in this chart. Christina, if we carry all of this forward on a practical level that might appeal to people, we have a feasibility budget of 1.5 million.
Yeah. Correct.
My past experience tells me the more of these we carry, the more hours we're going to need, and the greater likelihood we go over budget and feasibility if we don't. Or am I off on that?
It all depends on time, obviously, which equals money. And it's just based off of keeping it to a schedule that is typical, I would say, for an elementary school of this size and scope, to ensure that we're getting through the feasibility phase in a timeline that makes sense.
Okay.
So to that point, I think Annie's question leads me to another, and then Tim, I'll get to you. Gordon, I see you had your hand up, but it seems to have come down. So what do you have in mind for our next meeting? Is a community meeting on the 28th, right?
Yes, that's correct.
What do you have in mind for giving and getting with the community members at that meeting? And then that will help us understand where you need us to be, because we could take a straw poll tonight on just the B. We could take a straw poll tonight on B and the 0.1 options. I know I'm looking for a little guidance as far as timing, because it sounds like we all understand where this is leading, and the question really just becomes the wisdom of timing here. So what do you foresee for the 28th?
So we're actually meeting as an SBC on the 26th, which is a Monday, 2 days before the community meeting.
Got it.
So it would be helpful if there are options tonight that you're willing to straw poll that should no longer be considered within the PSR phase. I think it would be then best to come back on the 26th with a vote to just secure that information. And I think it would be helpful on the 28th for us to provide a PDP update to the community, letting them know again where we are within the process and what the next steps are. But then we can also let them know that we studied this amount of options within the first phase. We've showed you those before. You guys should be familiar with them. And we are now removing these specific ones. Here's why, and provide them with the facts on it.
I will go on a limb and say I am very much in favor of that approach of taking straw polls tonight, coming back for a vote on the 26th, and presenting that information. I'm mindful of people who are attending community meetings and wanting to get to something new. that we have to be carrying this along as well. And at some point we have to put our name on a decision and then help people understand why the decision was made. And we're equipped to do that. Tim, go ahead.
I guess my simple question would be, is there any reason why we wouldn't take a straw poll tonight to eliminate all options except for a 2.2?
Just a point of clarification, MSBA is going to require us to study an orange, a pink, and a blue.
Right.
Okay. That's
I
what
really
I was
love
curious
colors,
about.
Tim.
Yeah.
Got it. Got it. Okay. Yeah.
Do you want a motion, Teresa?
I don't think we need a motion for a straw poll. I think we just need a straw poll.
Can we do it by voice
roll call.
instead of friggin' roll call?
Yeah, if I can get out, I gotta find my different view so I can look at everybody. Yeah.
Teresa, Henry has a question.
Henry, go ahead.
I just wanted to ask if that straw poll could focus us on potentially one orange, one pink, one blue. If
Can we
that's
do
where
that?
we need to
So
be.
we
I
would
think
have to do, I would propose that we do two straw polls. One would be to remove B, site B. One, it would be a straw poll who's in favor of removing site B. And then a second straw poll to see if we are in favor of removing the pre-K to 3 option as a grade configuration.
so. You'd be taking the point ones away.
In two separate
Yes, all
votes.
the point ones in two separate straw polls. Yes.
Agree.
Agreed.
I can't make my view do this. So we will take a straw poll. I'm taking a straw poll for agreement. Raise your hand or indicate by nodding that you're in agreement with removing site B, also known as column B1.1, from further work. I'm just looking through. We've got hands raised. Okay. In case we've missed anything, is there anyone who does not agree with that action? If so, please use your voice. Okay. So that is in agreement that the SBC is in favor of removing site B, B1.1 column from consideration moving forward. Second straw poll, indicate your agreement with the decision to remove pre-K through 3 option moving forward as a grade configuration. Okay. Is there anyone not in agreement with that action? If so, please use your voice. I think I'm
Teresa,
frozen.
do you know who iPad is? I just want to make sure we're recording.
Naturally, I am frozen.
I do not see an iPad on.
Oh,
I'm
I
hopeful
do.
that someone can hear me and has started talking at this point.
We can hear.
We can
I'm
hear
going
you.
to relocate.
It's David Preen. Yep.
Oh, okay. Teresa, can you hear us? She's frozen. I think she just left. Let's give her a second.
I'm guessing it was just me that dropped.
Can you hear us now?
I can. I'm sorry about that.
No worries.
Where did you pick up?
Everyone was in agreement. No one had anything against it. So
Excellent. All right, then are the 2 hands raised with questions or comments about this, or are we ready to move on? Gordon?
Nope, gone.
Okay. Oh, hands raised are gone. All right. Then moving on to schedule update. Thank you all for that productive conversation.
can everyone see this okay?
Yep.
Okay. So this is the project timeline that I've been sharing with you since the beginning, since Doran Whittier has started and mapped out the feasibility study phase and what that looks like for town meetings as well as debt exclusion votes. The project team met right before Christmas and kind of reviewed the proposed schedule that was out there between the 2 different towns. And ultimately, when JCJ and Doran Whittier looked at our project schedule, it, as I had indicated earlier, is tight for feasibility and schematic design. But I do think that if we were to instead have town meetings in October and move the town meetings to November, with then a debt exclusion vote in December, that would allow the project team enough time to be able to put together the proper schematic design report during that phase, because it's really important for us, because that's where we lock in our budget with the project and MSBA itself. So we talked with Pam and Michelle about that process. I know Pam's had conversations with other people, I'm sure, within the district. But ultimately, this is the schedule that we're leaning towards, that we hope that everyone is on board for us for town meetings in November and the debt exclusion vote in December. And if Andy's still on, Andy, I know you had emailed me asking me for schedule information, and I didn't get back to you on purpose just because I was waiting to have this conversation with the whole group first. But this is what we've talked about with Pam and the district itself.
And we haven't had an opportunity, like, we've talked about the October timeframe loosely.
Loosely, yeah.
With the board chairs. So I'm hoping to get some feedback from this group tonight and then take it back to the town board chairs and get some feedback from them on the feasibility of this.
Andy, do you want to share any comments or thoughts based on that?
Yes. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. So the last schedule that I had PSR ending in May of 26 and then SD ending in October of 26. And it sounds like, did I understand we're extending it by a month to November?
Yeah.
Okay. So it's 6 months.
Yeah, basically PSR, yes, concludes in end of May because we have to go to a board meeting in June for that. But we're going to continue working on schematic design as soon as we're finished with our approval of the preferred schematic report and immediately go into schematic design. So Fawn, what was the date that we had specifically October for our board meeting date for schematic design that we outlined? I believe it is.
I have the schedule open. Let me just take a look real quick. For schematic design, we have MSBA board approval December 9th, 2020.
Oh, that's right. So we ended up, what we're going to do, and I forgot, I apologize. What we're going to do is we're going to do the town meeting and debt exclusion vote before the MSBA board approval, which you can do. You can do them either way, no matter what, with MSBA. But that will give us more time within schematic design, Andy. So basically, we'll be completing schematic design right up before town meetings in November to give us enough time to be able to present the right information to the town with the number and all that information. But then we'll be going to MSBA in December because you have to give your submission to MSBA 2 months prior to the board meeting date. And so when we did October, originally as our town meeting date, it pushed our schematic design so condensed that it just we wouldn't have enough time to be able to complete it. So that's why we're proposing doing town meeting and debt exclusion prior to MSBA board approval.
Okay. All right. And so then the estimates are happening. Are those done in October then, or after?
They would be done in, is it September or October?
It's the middle. We submit to the cost estimators mid-August, and then they have about 3 to 4 weeks. So we reconcile early to mid-September.
Right.
Okay. So then it gets presented to November town meeting, and then there's a follow-up ballot.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Can you speak briefly to when borrowing would begin on this timeline and how that would be impacted, if at all?
Michelle, I don't know if you want to talk about that.
Well, it really depends on when the whole project will get moving, to a state where we have to come up with additional funds in the next phase for billing. And that's what we've been talking about. The towns want to know, and really it depends on the cash flow needs for the actual project. But we can't obviously move forward until we have approval.
So we've been working with the town administrators to try and map out potential scenarios. We know that they have some ideas in mind. We have had a conversation with our financial advisors who, once we provide them with a little bit more data, they're going to start to model for us. So we anticipate a meeting coming up in January where we start to run through some potential timeline scenarios.
Those conversations are happening and you're bringing that information as it comes. Thank you.
Yep. But we are very, very early as compared to last time having this conversation. But I know people are looking to structure it in a particular way, so the sooner the better to get some sense of what could be done.
Great, thank you. Any other questions or comments about the timeline or schedule update? Okay. Well, thank you very much for that then.
Teresa, I do have one question here.
Go ahead.
Has the design team bought into this schedule too? I guess that's a question directly to Jim and to Fawn.
Yeah, we
Yes.
met with Doran Whittier to develop it jointly.
Okay, there you go.
Thanks. Well, thanks for asking.
I've been
No,
on
Gordon,
that
I
other
just came up
side.
with the schedule on my own. I didn't care what Fawn had to say at all.
Stop, Christina, stop.
Just kidding.
All right, then, concluding that piece, we will move on to other topics. Do we have anything not reasonably anticipated? 8 hours by posting time?
No, just a reminder again that we have our next meeting on the 26th, and then we have our community meeting on the 28th.
Okay, thank you. Public comment. I know we have two people listed as attendees, and I believe Alva had her hand up earlier. Alva or Patty, if you would like to make public comment, please are they able to unmute themselves?
No, they have to raise their hand.
Raise your hand, please. Going once, going twice. All right, well, as a reminder, you can always email directly or be in touch with representatives on the committee, so thank you. Reflections and action items. Anyone have anything to share? No? Okay, then in that case, I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Did you guys catch that? Someone moved and someone seconded.
Second,
All right.
Henry.
All right, we have to do this by roll call vote. I don't have my paper anymore, so I'm going to go down the list here. Annie.
Yes.
Gordon.
Yes.
Henry.
Yes.
Michelle.
Yes.
Andy.
Yes.
Ariel.
Yes.
Charlie.
Yes.
Jen.
Yes.
Kim.
Yes.
Mike.
Yes.
Pam.
Yes.
Tim.
Yes.
Tyler.
Yes.
Andy, did we already call you? Andy? I think it's got back to the top again. Oh, maybe not. Charlie?
Again, yes.
Emily?
Yes.
And I am a yes. Thank you all. And also thank you to our advisory members for being here. And you're not in the roll call vote, but we appreciate you being here and hope you will continue to join us and jump in anytime you need. And thank you to the public for attending.